My mother told my 18-year-old son she needed his university fund for an emergency procedure. He gave her everything. Then she funneled $43,000 to my niece. I didn't yell. I did this. 10 days later, a server handed them a notice. They opened it and started screaming. Leo was halfway through his second helping of shepherd's pie when Brooke made her announcement. I bought a motorcycle, she said, standing at the end of the table like she just won a damn Oscar. Paid for it outright. I looked up from my plate. Outright. She nodded, eyes already starting to water. I couldn't have done it without Grandpa and Grandma. The gift they gave me. $43,000. I still can't believe it. The whole table went quiet. I felt the wine glass in my hand pause mid-air. The grocery store Merlot had been flowing for a while. My sister, Dana, Brooke's mom, clapped like her daughter had just cured cancer. That's amazing, Dana said. They're so generous. The over-polished wood of the table reflected everyone's smiles. Except Leo's. He sat there, shoulders tight, barely blinking, just staring down at his food like it had started whispering secrets. I glanced at him, gave a little nudge under the table. He didn't look at me. Didn't even flinch. Leo, I asked. You good? He nodded. But not the kind of nod that means yes. The kind you give when you hope no one looks too close. Brooke wiped at her tears. I mean, who gives that kind of money to their grandkid just because they believe in you? I looked over at my dad, who looked pleased, but not surprised. Mom passed the salad bowl like this was just another Thursday. Seriously, Brooke went on. They didn't want to make it a big thing, but I had to say something. I just feel so lucky. Dana beamed. Well, you deserve it, honey. Leo stood up. I'm gonna get some water, he muttered. No one really noticed. But I did. He didn't look mad. He looked tight, like something inside him was locked up, and it was starting to rattle. I waited a minute, then slipped away from the table. The kitchen was empty. No Leo. I found him a minute later, sitting on the back steps in the dark, holding a glass of water with both hands like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. Hey, I said, keeping my voice low. You all right? He gave a tight smile. Yeah, just needed some air. But his leg was bouncing. His jaw was clenched. And his eyes were wet. I sat next to him and didn't push. The laughter from the dining room drifted out like a radio on low volume. Brooke's voice carried loudest. Something about how her new bike was matte black, custom leather seat. How Grandpa had told her she was brave. I glanced at Leo. His fingers gripped the glass tighter. It still hadn't clicked. I didn't know what was coming, but I knew something had already broken. That was the last family dinner that ever felt normal. We didn't know it then, but a crack had opened in the middle of that over-polished dining room table, and it was about to split our family straight down the center. Leo didn't say anything else that night. Not on the drive home, not when we got inside. He just walked straight past me and up to his room. I gave him space. Thought maybe he needed to cool off. But around 11, when I passed by his door and noticed the light still on, something in me tugged. I knocked. Yeah. His voice was quiet. I pushed the door open slowly. Leo sat on the edge of his bed, the only light coming from the old desk lamp in the corner. It cast long shadows across the room. You okay? I asked. He shrugged, then looked up at me, and I saw it. His eyes were red. Not from crying exactly, but from holding it all in. Can I talk to you about something? He asked. Always. I sat in the chair across from him, the one he always piled his hoodies on. He stared at the floor. Remember when Grandma called me last year? Around spring break. Yeah, I think so. She said Grandpa needed emergency eye surgery. Like, immediately. Said he could go blind if they didn't act fast. My stomach turned, but I stayed still. She said they didn't want to stress anyone out. That they tried to get help from their savings, but it wasn't enough. He swallowed. She said not to tell you or Aunt Dana. Said you'd just worry or try to take over. And that it was better if I helped quietly. I leaned forward slowly. Leo. I gave them everything, he said, voice cracking just a little. All of it. The whole college fund. $43,000. I stared at him. I couldn't even breathe for a second. I transferred it to Grandpa's account the next day. She was crying, Dad. She said they didn't want to burden anyone else. That it was just between me and them. My throat was dry. You thought you were helping. He nodded, finally looking up. I wanted to do the right thing. And that's when it hit me. 43,000. The same number Brooke had thanked them for. I sat back like someone had punched me in the chest. They didn't have surgery, did they? Leo asked. His voice was smaller now. There wasn't anything wrong with Grandpa's eyes, was there? I didn't answer right away. Because I knew. I knew exactly where that money went. Leo wiped at his face with the sleeve of his hoodie. I didn't care about the money, Dad. I swear. I just wanted to help them. I thought. He didn't finish the sentence. I wanted to tell him it wasn't his fault. That he did what he thought was right. But all I could do was stare at the floor. I'd given my parents money 100 times over the years. And it always disappeared. And now they had taken from Leo. Used him. Lied to him. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Leo whispered, "I didn't tell you because they said it'd cause drama." I looked him in the eye. "They were right about one thing," I said quietly. "There's gonna be drama." After Leo went to bed, I sat in the living room for hours. Just sat there. The house was dark except for the TV, which I'd muted without realizing. Some old sitcom flickered across the screen, laugh track playing in silence. But my mind was somewhere else entirely. 43 grand. The number kept echoing in my head, like a fire alarm I couldn't shut off. And it wasn't just the money. It was how familiar it all felt. The fake emergency. The secrecy. The praise lavished on someone else afterward. I'd seen this play before. I thought back to when I was 22, just out of college, working double shifts and living off canned soup. One night, Mom had called me crying. Said the furnace had gone out in January and they couldn't afford to fix it. I wired them 2 grand that same night. 3 weeks later, Brooke showed up to Easter dinner with a new iPad. From Grandma and Grandpa, she'd said with a giggle. They wanted me to have it for school. I remembered thinking, that's weird timing. But I let it go. There was always something. The roof that needed replacing. The car insurance that mysteriously lapsed. The medical bill that somehow couldn't be handled without cash. Every time, I stepped in. And every time, I saw Brooke benefit. A new laptop. A semester abroad. Designer clothes for some internship Dana bragged about endlessly. And through it all, my parents had smiled and played the role of modest, loving grandparents. I didn't want to believe it at first. I really didn't. But now I saw it for what it was. They'd been running the same con for over a decade. They weren't asking for help. They were funneling money to Brooke under the guise of need. And now they'd done it to Leo. He'd been manipulated with precision. They picked the one kid who'd hesitate to question them, who trusted them, who wouldn't want to burden his dad. And they didn't just lie. They took his future. I thought of the college brochures Leo had pinned to his wall. Oregon State, Purdue, UC San Diego. Places he'd researched, visited online, talked about over dinner. Gone, because my parents wanted to hand his money to their golden girl. I stood up slowly, walked to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were shaking. This wasn't just a bad decision. This was a pattern, a strategy. And I wasn't just angry. I felt stupid, because it had taken me this long to see it. Leo wasn't the first. He was just the newest. The final straw. I turned off the TV, walked upstairs, and sat at my desk. There wasn't going to be yelling. No door slamming. But I was done playing along. If they could lie that easily, then I could make plans of my own. Quietly. Carefully. And this time, I wouldn't be the one caught off guard. I didn't call ahead. I knew if I gave them a heads up, they'd find some excuse. Or worse, try to charm their way out of it. So I showed up on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, right after lunch. Their house looked the same as always, neat little yard, flag on the porch, a garden gnome Leo had painted when he was 7 still tucked under the lilac bush. I rang the bell. Mom answered. "Oh, Martin. What a nice surprise." She stepped aside to let me in without hesitation. That's what got me the most, how normal she acted. "Can I get you something? Tea? I've got lemon bars." "Just sit down, Mom." Her smile faltered, but she did what I asked. We sat across from each other in the living room, the same room where they'd unwrapped Leo's Christmas presents a few months earlier with fake tears in their eyes. "Where's Dad?" I asked. "Out running errands." "Good. This is about you." She folded her hands in her lap like she was preparing for a lecture at church. "All right, Martin. What's this about?" I leaned forward. "Did Grandpa ever need eye surgery?" She blinked. "Excuse me. Leo gave you $43,000. For an emergency. Surgery. Did that happen?" The pause was brief, but it was there. Then she straightened up. "Leo is an adult. He made a choice." I laughed once, quietly. "That's what you're going with?" "He offered," she said. "We never forced him." "You lied," I said, my voice flat. "You told an 18-year-old that someone might go blind if he didn't empty his college fund. And then you gave that money to Brooke." Her expression didn't change. That was the part that chilled me. "We didn't want to burden the rest of the family," she said calmly. He stepped up. "That's admirable." "No," I said. "That's manipulation. You didn't let him help. You tricked him. And now you sit here like you did nothing wrong." "He'll learn something from this," she replied. "Responsibility. Sacrifice." I stared at her. I wasn't sure if she really believed that or if she just needed to say something to sleep at night. Either way, it didn't matter. I stood. "You won't be seeing Leo for a while." She didn't flinch. "And if you want to know what happens next," I added, "you'll have to wait like everyone else." She gave a tight smile. "We've always done what we thought was best." I walked out without another word. The air outside was cold. But for the first time in years, I felt clear. The next morning, I called my sister. Straight to voicemail. I tried again an hour later. Nothing. I sent a text, just one sentence. "Can we talk about Leo?" No reply. By evening, I gave up and called Brooke. She picked up after the third ring, sounding casual, almost cheerful. Hey, Uncle Martin. Everything okay? I didn't dance around it. Did Grandma or Grandpa tell you where the money came from? She paused, then sighed like I was being dramatic. They said it was theirs. I waited, hoping maybe she'd say more. That some part of her would show a flicker of guilt. Nothing. They told me it was their money, she repeated. What am I supposed to do? Ask for a receipt? That was Leo's college fund. A beat of silence. Then she said, well, that sucks, I guess. But I didn't steal it. You didn't ask either. Why would I? They're my grandparents. They've always helped me. I thought they wanted to. And just like that, she hung up. I stared at the phone for a while. Not angry. Just numb. Leo sat on the couch, laptop open but untouched. He looked up. She say anything? I shook my head. They're not going to admit it. He looked down again. I figured. We talked that night. Really talked. About what he wanted now, what he still hoped for. He was angry, yeah, but more than that, he looked disappointed. Not just in them. In the idea of them. You think I was stupid? He asked. No, I said. You were kind. That's not the same thing. But I hated that he even had to ask. The next day, we made an appointment with a lawyer. I didn't know what to expect. I figured we'd have to convince someone to take it seriously. But once we explained the situation and showed the texts, the bank records, the timing, his tone shifted. This isn't just a family misunderstanding, the lawyer said. This is fraud. Leo sat perfectly still. And the fact that he was misled under the guise of a medical emergency? That's significant, the lawyer added. Especially since he was barely 18 at the time. It's coercion, at best. Leo nodded. Okay, I want a file. I glanced at him. You sure? He nodded again, slower this time. But first, he said, I want to see her. Just once. Give her a chance to say something. Anything. I need to know if she understands what she did. I didn't argue. I didn't want revenge for him. But I wanted him to get closure. And if that meant facing the woman who manipulated him one last time, so be it. The house smelled like old potpourri and lemon-scented cleaner when Leo stepped inside. His grandmother was sitting in her usual spot by the bay window, half reading a magazine, glasses pushed up on her head like she was too busy to use them properly. She didn't look surprised to see him. Oh, Leo, she said, voice bright and soft, like she'd been expecting him all day. Come in, sweetheart. Sit down. He didn't sit. I know where the money went, he said. She tilted her head, gave a small smile. What money? My college fund. She gave the lightest of sighs, like someone reacting to a child who just broke a vase and was now making too big a deal about it. Leo, honey, I don't know what your father's been saying. This isn't about Dad, he said. This is about you lying. You told me Grandpa needed surgery, that he might go blind. And then you gave my money to Brooke. Her expression didn't change much. She just set the magazine down on her lap. I never lied, she said. We needed help. And you helped us. You said it was a medical emergency. There was no surgery. She stood then, slowly, like every movement had to be deliberate. You're upset. I get that. But I think you've been manipulated. Your father always wanted to turn you against us. Leo's face didn't move. That's not true. Oh, Leo, she said, stepping closer. He's angry because we've always been closer with Brooke. You know that. He's using you to settle old grudges. He blinked hard, once, then shook his head. I'm not here to argue, he said. I wanted to give you a chance. Just one. To admit what you did. To say it wasn't okay. Her face tightened. You gave us that money because you love us. You can't take that back now just because your father's spinning some story. Leo turned to the door. She didn't follow him. As he reached for the handle, she called after him. You'll regret this, Leo. Families don't sue each other. He paused for just a second, then left without saying a word. 10 days later, a black SUV pulled up in front of their house. I was on the porch. The man in the suit got out, checked his file, and walked straight to the door. A knock. Then another. Then silence as the door opened. The process server spoke politely, handed over the envelope, and turned back toward his car. And then it started. I couldn't hear the exact words, but the screaming cut through the walls. Accusations. Shouting. One voice shrill with rage, my mother. Another voice, my father's, low and panicked. I stood on the porch with my hands in my pockets, not moving. The envelope had been delivered. The line had been crossed. And there was no going back. It started with a phone call from my cousin Jess. Hey, Martin. I don't want to stir anything, but your parents have been saying some stuff. About Leo. What kind of stuff? I asked. That he's suing them for beer money. That he blew his college fund on a car or something and now he's trying to blame them. I let out a slow breath. Thanks for telling me. That was just the beginning. A few days later, Leo's former piano teacher tagged him in a Facebook comment under some vague, preachy post about how some kids these days are so entitled they'd take their own family to court. Then came the phone calls from people we hadn't heard from in years. A second cousin in Arizona. An old neighbor. Even my dad's friend from church who hadn't spoken to us since Leo was in diapers. All of them calling to ask what was really going on. The story spreading through the family was ugly. That Leo was an ungrateful brat. That I turned him against the family. That we were just bitter because Brooke was doing well and Leo wasn't. I didn't argue. I didn't go online and make a scene. I just started collecting. Screenshots. Emails. Bank transfers. The original text message from my mom that said, "Please don't tell Martin, he'll worry too much. It's just a little surgery fund." Everything. I kept it all in a folder on my computer labeled simply, Truth. A week later, I sent it quietly to a few people who'd reached out in good faith. People who genuinely seemed confused and wanted both sides. One of them was Jess. She called me the next day. "Martin, this is bad." I had no idea. I know. I told Aunt Dana she needed to see it. I don't know if she'll even look, but I sent it. Thanks. That was the best we got. A few people stopped talking. A few switched sides quietly, like they didn't want to admit they believed the worst. But most? They just disappeared. People we used to see every Christmas. People who sent Leo birthday cards when he was little. Gone. Leo didn't cry about it. He didn't even get mad. He just got quieter. More focused. He spent his days prepping with the lawyer, sorting through timelines, printing copies of statements. One night, as we were cleaning up after dinner, I asked him, "You doing okay?" He nodded. "I'm fine. You don't have to be." He paused, then said, "It sucks. But it's better to know." That's what broke my heart the most. He wasn't bitter. He was just done hoping they'd do the right thing. And in some strange way, that made him stronger than all of them combined. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Just a few rows of benches, some mismatched wood paneling, and a clock that ticked loud enough to make your teeth grind. Leo wore a navy blazer we bought the week before. He hated it, said it made him look like a lost intern, but he wore it anyway. My parents sat on the other side, just behind their attorney. My dad stared straight ahead. My mom scanned the room like she was already planning what to say afterward. Brooke wasn't there. The judge called us to order. Nothing dramatic, just a matter-of-fact tone and a nod to proceed. Their attorney spoke first. She painted my parents as humble retirees, confused and heartbroken. Claimed Leo had volunteered the money as a gift, and we were twisting things out of context to make them look bad. When she said the word gift, I glanced at Leo. His jaw flexed, but he didn't flinch. Our lawyer stood, calm as ever. He laid out the timeline. Showed the text from my mother, the bank transfer, the email the Brooke sent 3 days later titled, "Don't tell Martin, just enjoy it." Then Leo took the stand. He looked too young to be there. Just a kid in an ill-fitting blazer, hands folded tightly in front of him. But when he spoke, his voice was clear. He told them everything. How he'd received the call from my mother, how scared she'd sounded, how she told him Grandpa might lose his eyesight, how she'd cried when she said they didn't want to tell anyone else and make it a big deal, how he'd wired the money immediately because he loved them and wanted to help. He pulled out a folder and opened to a single page. "I wrote this note in the transfer memo," he said. "I wanted them to remember what it was for." He read it aloud, "For Grandpa's eye surgery. I hope this helps. Love, Leo." There was a pause. The judge asked him, "Did they ever mention surgery again?" Leo shook his head. "No, not once." A few weeks later, they gave my cousin a motorcycle. "Did you know your cousin was receiving the gift?" "No." "And if you had known your funds were going to her instead?" Leo took a breath. "I would have said no. Absolutely no." The judge nodded and turned to my mother. She took the stand reluctantly. She tried to play it cool, told the court that Leo insisted on helping, and they simply accepted. But under cross-examination, it fell apart. Our lawyer pulled up a call log from that day. My mother had called Leo 3 separate times within 30 minutes. "Were you pressuring him?" "Of course not." "Did you mention surgery?" "I might have." "I don't remember." "Did your husband need surgery?" She paused. "No." That was it. She tried to backpedal, say it was a miscommunication, but the damage was done. When the judge delivered the ruling, his voice was calm and crisp. "In light of the evidence, it is clear that the plaintiff was misled into transferring funds under false pretenses. The court orders full repayment of the $43,000, plus court costs and legal fees." Leo let out a breath I didn't realize he'd been holding. My mother didn't look at him. My father just stared at the floor. Outside the courtroom, Leo leaned against the wall and looked up at the ceiling. "I thought it'd feel better," he said. "It will," I told him. "Just not today." We didn't celebrate. We didn't high-five or post anything online. We just walked back to the parking lot, side by side. The truth had been heard. And that was enough for now. A week after the ruling, I stopped by my parents' house, not to visit, just to return a piece of mail that had ended up at my place. The for sale sign was already staked into the front lawn. The same lawn where Leo used to kick a soccer ball with my dad on Sunday afternoons. where Brooke once set up her lemonade stand when she was 10. Now the shutters were drawn, the grass a little too long, the windows dark in the middle of the day. Later that evening, I overheard Brooke talking to my mother in the parking lot of the strip mall near my office. They hadn't noticed me. I was standing at my car, keys in hand, frozen by the sound of her voice. "I'm not giving it back," she said. "I don't care what the court says. That money was mine." My mother didn't argue. She just said, "I know, sweetheart. We'll figure it out." The entitlement didn't even surprise me anymore. By the end of the month, the house was listed on 3 different real estate websites. Word got around quick. A few old family friends called, pretending to check in. I didn't answer. My sister texted once, "You really let your son do this to our parents?" I didn't reply. When the final court order was enforced and their bank accounts were drained to repay the judgment, I got a short, bitter voicemail from my father. "I hope you're happy." That was the last I heard from him. They moved into a rundown 2-bedroom apartment across town. Nothing unsafe or dangerous, just small, quiet, forgettable. I never visited. Leo didn't either. We didn't talk about it much. He started spending more time with friends, picking up hours at a local bookstore. He applied for new scholarships, adjusted his college plans. He made it work. But the silence around us grew heavier. Family dinners were gone. Holidays went unmentioned. Dana stopped sending birthday cards. No one reached out to apologize. Not once. But in the quiet, we found something else. Peace. No more walking on eggshells. No more pretending. It was just me and Leo now. And that was enough. 1 year later, Leo stood in our kitchen wearing a psychology department hoodie and holding a coffee mug that said, "People are weird, and I love it." He looked happy. Not in a flashy way, just solid. Calm. College suited him. He'd switched majors 3 times before landing on behavioral psychology, which somehow made perfect sense. After everything we'd been through, understanding why people do what they do had become more than just curiosity for him. It was survival. "I'm gonna head to campus early," he said, grabbing his bag. "We've got that lab on group dynamics today. Should be fun." "Don't psychoanalyze your professor," I said. He smirked. No promises. After he left, I stood there for a while, just looking around the house. It was quiet. No voices yelling in the distance. No phone vibrating with guilt trips. No holiday invitations laced with backhanded digs. Just peace. And the absence of all the noise I used to mistake for family. I thought I'd feel lonelier than this. But I didn't. I felt lighter. Sometimes I miss the idea of family dinners. The version I used to hope for, the one where we all sat around laughing about old times without someone twisting the knife under the table. But the real thing? The manipulation, the favoritism, the quiet punishments for not playing along? That, I didn't miss at all. Leo was stronger now. Not bitter, just smarter. Wiser. He gave people the benefit of the doubt, but not unlimited access. He still helped when he could, but he had boundaries now. Real ones. And me? I slept better. I didn't feel the need to check my bank accounts every week for mystery favors. I didn't dread birthdays or graduations, wondering what new drama would hijack the day. I just lived. One night, we were sitting on the couch watching some documentary about con artist Leo's pick, naturally. About halfway through, he muted the TV and turned to me. "You know," he said, "I used to feel dumb about what happened, but now I think it was kind of a gift." I raised an eyebrow. "Getting scammed out of your college fund was a gift?" He smiled. "It taught me what love isn't. What family isn't." I didn't say anything right away. Just nodded. He unmuted the TV. That was it. No big speech. No melodrama. Just understanding. A year ago, we were drowning in betrayal. Now, we were building something new. Smaller. Simpler. But stronger than anything that came before it. The people who once claimed to love us were gone. And we were still standing.